Okay. Welcome to another edition of Unlocking Astrology with the unlocker himself, the man that has the keys, Mr. Samuel Reynolds. Hi.
All right, thank you.
So, before I hit record, you asked me a question.
I
And
asked you, yeah. I was
you
like,
know,
where are you in relation to Christianity? Are you a Christian? Are you Christian
yeah.
resistant?
And I said, let's answer this because everything that this is to me is about the transparency. We're not doing a show. We're not sitting here. And not the only reason, the reason why I feel it's important for us to have this conversation is the answer that I'm about to give you. Um, where am I with religion? I said, I follow the teachings of Christ. And I put a hard T on the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that mean for me? Well, I've read the Bible. I used to teach the Bible. I was part of what people thought was a cult at some point, where I would have church every day. Wednesday Bible study, we would have lessons, we have tests. I mean, it was intense. We would go out and preach the Bible, give people, because the Great Commission tells you to go out and teach, and so we followed the Great Commission, got people baptized. And at some point I was like, I see people, get emotional about being baptized, and then several weeks they've fallen away.
Mm-hmm.
And they kept trying to push me into leadership because my personality. I was like, yeah, but Christ wasn't really about that hierarchy thing. And what gives you the right to be in that position? And what gives you the right to tell me I should be in that position? I'm just a servant. I just want to be a servant. And then they were like trying to, so I had to ask the pastor this question. I said, you are telling people the only way to get to heaven is through this church. So anybody that's not in this church, they're going to hell. Now, I already knew the answer to that. I needed to hear him say it. And based on how he answered would determine what I would do next. And actually, there was only a wrong answer, because if he said yes, I was leaving. And if he said no, I was leaving, because now you're a liar. Mm-hmm. So I left. I left on the answer that I knew he was going to give me. Either way, it was the wrong answer, because what I discovered in reading, and I don't want to say much the way Nat Turner read that Bible and saw different things, because this is really this thing that you and I are doing every week. For me, the goal is self-discovery, the answer this question, why am I here? And what my conclusion is, that I'm here to be a better person. But how am I a better person? Through other people, through not inspiring, but through discovering myself through other people, through my relationship with other people. And that means that love thing that Jesus came here with, feeding 5,000, chilling. He didn't have a pulpit that he came into every Sunday. You had to go and worship at his feet. There was no hierarchy. There were no purple robes. He didn't sit on a throne. He was with and among the people that most people rejected. He said, all of this judgment, y'all want to talk about Sabbath. You want to talk about the Sabbath and what I'm doing on the Sabbath? When you are treating people, you honor your mother. No, you follow legalism. You wash, you do all these 600 laws and whatever, washing your hands and all this stuff, but you treat people like trash. I'm paraphrasing, of course.
Yeah.
But that's the point too. It is for us to embody these tenets, right? Which were only two: love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, thy soul, thy mind. So what does that mean? If you believe that there's a higher being and there's a reason for being beyond you, love that. Love that energy that produced everything. And then love one another. Love one another. And at that point that Peter, and I'm sorry, you get me now, you're gonna ask me a question and I want to answer it fully. When Jesus came back to Peter, if you believe that, and even if you don't, I want to share the story because I think it's powerful. This man betrayed or denied him 3 times, as Jesus said he would, ran away, and then hid while he was being crucified. And was like, I don't want nothing to do with that. Y'all not getting me. And Jesus found him after he was resurrected and said, on this rock, Cephas, which Peter, I'm going to build my church. And he asked him 3 times, do you love me? Yes, Lord, of course I love you. Feed my sheep. Do you love me? Yes, of course, Lord. No. Feed my sheep. Do you love me? Feed my sheep. So every day I get up with this. Am I feeding people? Am I loving people? What does that look like? What is love? Do I love me? And first, I got to love me before I can love you, right? And so this journey for me called life, when you ask me, do I follow? Yes, and am a Christian from this standpoint, that my goal is to love, and my goal is to treat people the way I want to be treated. And my goal is to not judge. My goal is to live and let live. My goal is freedom for everybody, because all of us just get one chance at this spin. As far as I know, I ain't seen nobody come back. And if that's the case, then why do we oppress people? So even this exploration into the signs and what it all means, it's like, what about you can you see that you can refine, that you see in somebody else, that you can extract, that can help improve the condition of your life and the life of the people around you? Because happy people make happy people, and I just want everybody to be their good happy selves. So I'm sorry I took a long time answering that, but you asked, so
No, you
that's
don't.
my answer.
Don't be sorry to me, and I don't think your listeners and viewers are going to be sorry, even though some will be like, "When are you going to talk about Aquarius?"
Okay, all right,
And,
yeah.
and and what I'll say is that on some level, everybody, you've been listening to Karen talk about Aquarius, and why I say that is that in many ways, Aquarius reflects that sensibility, where they want to take the people who have been on the margins and bring them more toward the center. Ideally in the spirit of love, but for many, it will be on the spirit of principle and the idea of, or just ideals, period. Now, Christ exhibited in it through the idea of love, but Aquarius, as a water bearer, is bringing the soothing waters of hope, the soothing waters of aspiration and ideals. And a lot of people think Aquarius, by virtue of the name, is a water sign. It's an air sign. And just to kind of remind people, we've been talking about the air signs when we talked about Gemini, and then when we talked about Libra. Now we're at the last out of the first, through the 12. And that air sign as a fixed air sign, right? As versus, Libra being cardinal and Gemini being mutable, is really more so trying to hold the space for bringing multiple people together from divergent ends with a sense of a plan, with a sense of a vision. And we even can see that through some elements of the season, especially in the Northern Hemisphere, where in Leo, we have the natural power of the sun, the heat of the sun to kind of keep us warm and bring things together. But in Aquarius, we got to bring the heat, right? We got to come together. We got to rely on fire. We got to find ways to congregate together and build together in order and systematize together in order to have that sense of connection and community. So Aquarius really is very dedicated to that ideal, not just of building community, but that can come through friends, that can come through an aggregate of believers, but there's a way in which they want to really congeal the sense of principle and ideal. And some of that might also center around truth and the belief in truth. And when I say truth, it's like, from the X-Files, the truth is out there. So sometimes they're out there too. So one thing that's very much often said about Aquarians is that they're eccentric. And that's because these people are not only inspired by ideals, but by virtue of those ideals is an integrity that they hold related to their individuality and being individuals. And now that gets into some interesting territory because as much as they're guided by that sense of individuality, they have to maintain that balance between the individuality and the idea of the collective and not one become too much of the other. Now, classically, Aquarius is a sign of Saturn. Now, many contemporary astrologers have associated that with Uranus, but I think the real story is better told through Saturn. And just to revisit him, because we talked about him a little bit with Capricorn, Saturn, people remember the Saturn wanted to eat his children, right? That's the dude that wanted to eat his children. They don't remember he's also the dude who overthrew his tyrannical father, Uranus, right? Which we now make the analogy to Uranus or Uranus. But anyway, he overthrew his father, cut off his testicles, threw them into the sea. From that foam, putatively came Venus, all these other things. And before his father fell away, disappeared, we're not clear exactly what happened. He prophesied for Saturn, was like, the same thing's going to happen to your children. Now, why is this relevant? Because what can happen with Aquarius is that they can become so beholden toward their sense of vision and wanting to go and have things along a certain line. They can also become creatures related to containment, conservatism, and not necessarily broaden that sense of reach. Go ye therefore and teach all nations. They don't keep that Great Commission. They keep the Great Commission to like those who want to be down with what I'm saying, to my ideal. And they may not keep that same spirit. So we often see in more the popular sense, like one love, the idea of the Aquarian is like, they're the humanitarians of the zodiac. They're the people like Bob Marley, who was an Aquarian, or they're like Rosa Parks, who stood up for us and who actually, sat down for us. They're like, they romanticize these people, which on some level, I'm saying that's true. But on another level, that quote unquote humanitarianism might not be so much about being humane to everyone, but someone that follows along their principles. Because this is when I evoke other Aquarians: Ronald Reagan, Dick Cheney, Alan West, Paul Ryan, Dan Quayle, right? We have these, or Glenn Beck, Sarah Palin, right? Those are Aquarians too. And you might say, like, how can this be the same sign, those people, as Toni Morrison or or
Oprah,
Oprah Winfrey, right? How can they be the same sign? Well, this is where we kind of have a coalescing principle. Aquarians are for those people who they see on the margins in some way that they want to bring to the center. And that's the ideal that drives them, because they often also feel they're on the margins. Where do I fit? How do I find my way of belonging? Because on some deep-seated level, I don't feel like I belong. So I want to be attentive to those who also may not feel like they belong. And that is humane. That is a way in which they're angling toward love. And it goes deeper. One of the things I also found about Aquarians related to some things that you were saying about your vision of Christ, which I really relate to, is that they don't get too fixated on titles as well. So one of the things I have found is that, you could be the ex of an Aquarian, right? And when you were with them, they let you drive their car. And so y'all still cool, but you still need the car. They may let you still drive that car, right? Now, their new partner may be like, why are you letting your ex drive the car? I'm the one now. They're not all caught up about titles. They're not going to fixate on like, well, this has to be right and you have to fit in this box. They're not about fitting into boxes. They want to kind of step out of the box. They want to innovate the box. They want to rethink the box. So we can think of someone like Thomas Alva Edison. Now, when I say Edison, let me put him in context, because it's Black History Month, right? Putting him in context, this goes also with the idea that I think that Aquarians are innovators, or they can consolidate innovation. So one of the things to acknowledge is that many things that Thomas Alva Edison is credited with creating, he didn't, right? Lewis Latimer, for example, right, is someone who we have to mention, who worked for Alva Edison, for Thomas, and and Edison actually acquired some measure of his patents and credit for his work. Now, that's not me saying, so no one reads this wrong, he's saying Aquarians are thieves. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that
Edison was a thief.
Right.
And people can have bad traits in all signs.
On all the signs. But I am saying what Edison did reveals something, whereas he sought to consolidate and take what had been already working and improve upon. You listen to the work of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, right? And Mozart didn't invent the piano. He didn't do all these different things, but he definitely was innovative with his music, right? In terms of how things happened in Europe related to the music.
Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan didn't invent the game, but definitely changed the game. So this is something to understand, because a lot of times people will say, and this goes back to an early conversation, and I know I get in trouble with this, where I say to people that the most radical sign of the zodiac is Taurus, right? But people always want to claim, no, 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 it's Aquarius. And I think that's because of the association with Uranus, which for me is kind of funny, because Uranus, is the guy who got his testicles chopped off, right? And overthrown. He wasn't the radical. Saturn was the radical. And there's a warning and there's a lesson in that, where you have to be careful that in your pursuit of being the gorilla on the margins, that you don't become the tyrant once you get to the center, right? So one example is, I laugh about Sarah Palin, because Sarah Palin is always talking about lamestream media, right? And all these different things. I'm like, aren't you mainstream media now, right? You're not on the margins anymore. You're not marginal. Same thing that was true for Reagan. And there's ways in which we were talking about the self-destructive tendency that you were observing, and that one can talk about with Capricorn, and then we also see in Scorpio. I think there's some of that in Aquarius as well, but it's different. Aquarius will die on their hills of principle, right? Now, it depends on how you're willing to die on that. And I am not knocking that people should, chuck their principles or chuck their ideas, because that's not what I believe. But at the same time, we can look at someone like Bob Marley. Bob Marley was not willing to lose a toe, right? Because of what he believed. He wasn't willing to budge. He wasn't willing to give. My father was an Aquarian, also spent time inveighing and, decrying people and saying this didn't happen, not realizing well, you kind of built this bed because you didn't want to play any games any other way, right? Which isn't a bad thing, but recognize what you're doing, right? But the other thing, speaking about inveighing, I am convinced that no one can inveigh, and I love that word, where you can kind of decry and denounce with such venom. No one can do that like Aquarius. What I used to love is listening to Keith Olbermann inveigh against the system or whatever, right? So, and he's like, how dare you, sir? Blah, blah, blah. And then you can listen to like an Aquarian like Frederick Douglass. What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him more than any other day in the year the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is accustomed, right? That's power. That's Aquarius, where they tackle the system, right? In order to innovate it, in order for it to change, to make more space for those who are operating at the margins where they see themselves. When they get too attached to that sense of power, though, then that balance between the individual and the community gets skewed, and then they can have an ego as big as Leo, right? And so that can be the other problem that can also happen for the Aquarian. So, I mean, they're very powerful in the sense of what they can generate. Sometimes they like to be more the kingmaker, like Dick Cheney, right? Rather than always in the front. Sometimes they can be more in the margins. It's interesting, we talked about Oprah. Oprah has made a lot of people's careers, right? She really has. We have to give her credit for that. And
let's go down the list. Dr. Oz, Rachel Ray,
Dr. Phil,
because of the beef, the beef industry lawsuit. He came in and then she turned around and made that happen. She and Ava. She and Tyler Perry, I'm not saying that she made Tyler Perry, because I think he was going
she helped him get to another level.
And then he helped her, came back around when she started her network. There's always kind of been that sistership between she and Ava DuVernay. We saw it with Selma.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure Gail.
right? There's a way in which they kind of open pathways for people who are on these margins. Same thing for Toni Morrison. What often is not said about Toni Morrison is that before Toni Morrison,
Wait,
I'm
let
about
me
to say it,
pull this up.
before Toni Morrison was an author, she was an editor working at Random House, paving the way for many of the names like Tony K. Bambara, that and the Salt Eaters that we now just can have as in our continuum household names, right? But that was her work, and then she, by virtue of opening the path, then opening it more, as being the first Black American Nobel Prize winner
Mm-hmm. I
for
mean,
literature,
yeah. Angela Davis,
and Angela Davis.
Muhammad Ali.
Well, he's Capricorn.
No, but she gave him a book deal.
Oh, mm-hmm.
Angela Davis, book deal.
Oh yeah.
She was an editor at Random House.
I was saying, okay, I thought you were going with Aquarius because Angela Davis was
No.
also
I'm
an
saying
Aquarian too.
you talk about the
Yeah.
launching,
Right.
not that she launched their careers, but their book publishing. And this Black book, which my daddy had,
Mm-hmm.
that book is
It's her book. Yeah.
35 years has been in my midst, and it's old. I didn't know she did that until I watched the documentary on Toni Morrison, and I was like, I think I have that book somewhere. I had to go through my thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, pulled it out. I was like, oh my God, she was the first person to tell Black people about themselves in such a way. Like this is such, whew.
And that was her project, by the way. I mean, her project was to take the people who appeared in the works of like Fitzgerald and the great American authors, great American white authors, to take those people who had existed, Black people who existed in their margins, and put them center.
Yeah.
That was her work. That's what she did, in her characterization and development. And I thought that was a great leitmotif for what Aquarius is about. And going back to where we started, where you talked about the Christ figure, talked about Christ. I mean, that's not kind of, but that is what Jesus did. We didn't get so much in terms about the rules and this is the way things, but what about the people? So if we can say that Leo is the stage, then Aquarius represents the audience and the people who are in the audience and the people who are receiving this light and how they process it, how they work with it, how they deal with it, how they build from it. And so Aquarius becomes instrumental in that. And, and that's the best of what they can do. We even have like a famous Aquarian to thank related to that in America, in terms of Franklin Delano Roosevelt in Social Security, and the idea that we catch those people who are falling through the cracks. So I think one thing to understand about that, it can be hard. I should talk about the hard parts, and I can even talk about my father, whose birthday was just yesterday.
Oh.
So my father, exemplified a lot of things about Aquarius. And one of the things is where you could be attentive to those people on the margins, but it can be hard for those people who expect to be center stage, right? So my father had, I like to tell the story. He had this penchant for when he would see people, hey baby, what's up, my man? Blah, blah, blah. And, I would sometimes wonder like if he knew these people's names, but he was always attentive to various people. So I never forgot, I went up to him and blocked him his way getting to the refrigerator. And I was like, I got a question for you. Boy, move. I got to get to the fridge. Question is, what's my name? What you mean? What's my name? I see you go around and, hey, boy, blah, blah, blah. What's up, my man? Blah, blah, blah. Using everybody's name. And you say, hey, killer. You always call me killer. But what's my name? Boy, if you don't move in front of that fridge, I just ask. I just want to know. I don't know if you know my name. And he told me, your name is Samuel Frederick Reynolds. I gave you that damn name. Now move, right? And you pushed me out of the fridge. And I think that came, and that sensibility never completely left because we're so attentive to what happens on the margins. Sometimes it's hard for those people closest to them to feel close to them, right? And that goes along with this thing that often is described as detachment. Now, I don't think Aquarians are detached people. I've had too many Aquarians cry in my chair during sessions or cry during the Zoom or be emotional. They can be emotional people. That detachment comes where they don't necessarily, they're not going to buy in because they're idealistic. They're not going to buy in on just the level of feeling about what you're feeling or what you deem as important. So for instance, if you come to them for the 10th time about like, you know, my sister, I don't like the way she treats my nephew, and blah, 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 and you're going on about that, they're going to expect some measure of agency and action, like be a damn individual. What are you doing? And why are you taking up my time where I could be thinking about saving the world about your problems, right? It's small potatoes.
Right.
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 Aquarius wants to think about the big potatoes, right? In terms of the meaning and learn more and get more active related to the world and build a sense of community. And here you are talking about again your nephew that you barely see, right? So they don't want to deal with those elements of hypocrisy. It's challenging for them. I think the other thing that can be challenging for them, because they're also very private people, not as private as Scorpio. So yes, you can use their government name in the street, usually. Although they may have a different name, they may tell you like, call me Serious One, right? It's like, okay, they're most likely to have a different name, not just African, but some other kind of way that reflects their individuality and sense of themselves. But, you can see them out in the street, but they don't want to necessarily, they want to have some space for themselves and that sense of individuality because they realize that it's something precious to guard and keep. And so kind of having someone immersed in that, they think like, well, you're just intimacy adversive, and it's not that per se. It can be some of that, but they don't want to get too close to the point where they feel like they lose that individuality and that spark. So these are the people who can be tirelessly working out to do things. They work for the youth, they work with seniors, they're on this board and that board, but then they don't answer the phone when you call them. And like, it's hard to reach. So that can be one of the difficulties for them and the challenges for those around them, in feeling to them. The other thing what can go with that is that they can get hard if they feel like that, and that's the nature of idealism. If they feel that the world, as they get older especially, doesn't live up to the principles and sets of their ideals, they can get bitter. And so one of the things that they need to watch out for is that level of bitterness and, hardening in their heart and realizing that ideals are guides and that they can use those particular guidelines for what they want to see in the world to help give it shape, but not feel like they have to be so beholden to it that those ideals become idols.
Right. So, I don't have too many Aquariuses, Aquarii. Is that
Aquarians.
Latin? Aquarians, in my life, so I don't have much reference. But you say that all of the signs are in us. Just really quickly, first of all, Sagittarius. I saw a lot in the comments. Sagittarius is a little pissed
It
off.
blew up.
Yeah. Sorry. Oh well. And a few others, like you ain't named the good people, whatever. Y'all can go down your own rabbit holes because all of the signs are in us, according to
Right.
Sam Reynolds.
Yeah.
What is the sun sign? We're talking right now, sun signs.
I'm talking about signs in general, which can be applicable to the sun sign, the rising sign, or the moon sign. Right.
Okay. So when you talk about Aquarius, these are people who have Aquarius rising, moon, and sun. Okay,
Yep.
have these traits. What's the difference between the sun, the moon, and the rising?
So the sun becomes more, excuse me. The analogy I like to give is that imagine you have to go to the store to get something like milk or water, right? There's an intention. So the sun represents an intention of the soul, what it wants to retrieve and behold in life. Then the moon would be more like the vehicle, the day-to-day experience by which you get to the store to fulfill that intention. So it represents the body. It represents also even one aspect of the mind that deals with memory, also the emotions, all the ways in which you start to coalesce the experience of movement in the world, by which you start to, then associate with particular things, particular feelings, what's, in terms of things with your body and sensations. All of that is the moon, including the first body you had while you were doing this, which is your mother's body, right?
Mm.
So the moon also represents the mother. Then the route, the unique path by which you get to the store that belongs to you, that is the ascendant. So the ascendant becomes the way by which you navigate through life, what you're paying attention to, what's paying attention to you. So it makes the difference between whether you're flossing or whether you want to be incognito, right? And you want to kind of like have your own path where, others can see more what you're doing, however it is.
Mm.
And so it becomes that granular experience. And that's why the time is so important to an astrologer, because that gives them the ascendant. Your moon sign could be in effect the whole day. The sun could be in effect the whole day. But your rising sign is only going to be true generally about 2 hours. And even then, the astrologer is paying attention to the actual degree. That degree will give that astrologer enough information about the planet that's in charge of that particular sign, and then even more about where the planets and how you're moving along that particular path. And so if you're Aquarius rising, you're going to be much more attentive to wanting to follow a path that ultimately leads more to bringing people more on the margins into the center. If you're a moon, you may feel moon in Aquarius, you may already feel like I'm out there or somehow I'm different. Even if you're born like quote unquote wonder bread, white touch, like I fit in, I'm Anglo-Saxon, my last name is Smith, I fit in every way, but in some particular way, you may not feel like you belong. And so you might be more attentive to like, especially in the 80s, what's this rap, this hip hop? Next thing you know, you're doing rhymes and you're out there break dancing, and your father's going like, what are you doing there, Jim? Right? We don't do that, right? But you're following this path because these feel like your peeps. And remember, I told you the emotion becomes your experience of your day-to-day vehicle, how you feel in that. And then the sun may be where you feel the power of the intention and it just seems to shine through. And you have this, even though sometimes you go off the path and then you kind of come back, just like the sun to some degree. And you might say, well, wouldn't that be more like the moon? The moon does that too, but the moon is much more intimate. The sun is kind of like the deeper recesses of ourselves. So on some level, what we're doing when we're unlocking astrology, we're trying to unlock the sun, the moon, and the rising in order to better coordinate how these three work together to become a whole self, to become a whole Karen, to become a whole Sam.
I've never had my chart, as you know, done. And when you had the information, and I didn't give you all the information anyway, so you lost it magically.
Mm-hmm.
I know that was
Your
on
ancestors
purpose.
were like, yo,
Yeah,
whatever, not now.
But as you're talking, I might have an Aquarius rising somewhere.
You might.
Who knows? What are the likelihoods of people? What's the likelihood of someone having an Aquarius sun, moon, and rising?
Very likely. I mean, because all it takes for an Aquarian sun to have Aquarius rising is to be born at dawn while the sun is traveling through Aquarius. Then for the moon, if they're like a new moon, like we just had one last week, and you were born at dawn, guess what? You got a sun in Aquarius, moon in Aquarius, and Aquarius rising.
Okay.
Right? Your Chinese New Year.
Chinese New Year. That's you made yourself laugh. All right. We named, I think, just about every famous Aquarii.
I don't know if we have. I mean, I always miss some people. I mean, but there's a lot of them, a good number of them. And then I have to poke fun at Scorpios because Scorpios are conceived during Aquarius.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
So there's some way in which one manifests the other. Just like I think I told you, Taurians are conceived during Leo.
And that makes perfect sense. And listen, this is we're gonna miss some things, both of us. I'm not an expert at all, but things are gonna be missed, which is why the folk, y'all get in the comments and fill in the blanks.
Fill in the blanks, comment, give me your thoughts. I know I angered some Sagittarians. One kind of reached out to me on Instagram, was like, I didn't like that. And that's cool. And I said that. I mean, I understand. I can't please everyone. I can just talk about what my experience of the sign is based on being a consultant and then someone who's paying attention to this and also thinking through this. Because sometimes people rely just singularly on experience. Like, I don't know any shy Leos. Well, maybe you don't know that many Leos, right?
Right.
But you could live long enough and meet them, and then in possibility recognizing that if you think through the sign, which is important, the word consider, literally the word consider means considere, to think with your stars. So what we're learning to do as we like talk through these signs is to think with your stars.
I love it. I love it. And as far as Sag, for me, the most important, impactful person in my life was Sagittarius to this day. So most impactful. Shout out to my mother too. But my dad is, I embody him in so many ways. Even sometimes I look at
That's
myself.
powerful. Yeah, same
My
thing for
God,
me. Someone just looked at my father on Facebook, was like, "You look just like your dad." Whereas earlier in my life, people used to say, "You look just like your mom."
how does that work? But we'll get to that another time.
That's, yeah, I've been thinking a lot about that, but we can get to that another time. I know you have to go.
No, you have to go.
Okay.
All right, Samuel Reynolds, follow him at unlockastrology.com and SF Reynolds for Samuel Frederick Reynolds, SF Reynolds on the Twitters, and drop the comments here, like, share, do all of that. And we'll see y'all in what's after Aquarius? Pisces?
Pisces.
Okay. All right. We'll see the two fish, one swimming upstream, one swimming
And
down.
downstream.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Hey, Erica. All right. Thank you, Samuel.
Thank you.